Hey, everyone who's watching, today we are going to do the breakdown of a movie. We've done this before, right, but we're going to do this again. And what I took was a documentary called Blackfish. And I watched the movie several times, actually, and I found it fascinating. And what I found it fascinating about was its clinical implications that I found as a clinical social worker. So I'm going to break this movie down, and I want to discuss with you how a killer whale, quote, quote, becomes a rabid, vicious killing machine that unfortunately had killed two different trainers in a 20-year period. And I watched the movie, and there's an investigation by the government against SeaWorld. People have watched the movie. If you haven't watched the movie, please go watch the movie. It's very, very interesting. But what I found fascinating was the clinical aspect, which we're going to break into right now. So today, it's about Blackfish, how to become a killer whale. Here we go. And I'm not going to waste any time going over the plot because that's really a waste of time. If you can, please go watch the movie. But here we go. In the movie, when it starts off, you have different trainers that had worked with this animal called Tilikum. That was the name given to it when it was captured over the years. And here's what came out about all these people. And before we begin, though, I want to just clarify something. This is not about ragging on the trainers who do the work that you see in SeaWorld. That's not the point. That's not the point. They truly were invested in caring for these animals the best they could. They truly loved them. They cared about them. They wanted to do the job the best they could. So it's not about their commitment, their devotion, their love. That's not about it. What this is about is the clinical understanding of how this tragedy unfolded and understanding it doesn't happen just overnight, but you need a period of time. And what we're going to do also is I'm going to break this down to show how clinically an animal can become a killer and violent and aggressive the same way kids that I work with become angry, unhappy, miserable adults. So here we go again to clarify. Of all the trainers, no one had any further education, it seemed like, beyond high school or general college. There was no master's degree with PhD programs in marine biology, for instance. You're working with these massive animals, but no one had any detailed information how to work with them on a marine level, on an animal level, on a pod level. They pick people on personality. Are they nice people? How well can you swim, for instance, was a big one. Well, you're in the water a lot. That makes a whole lot of sense. Nice people, put on the wetsuits, get in the water. All the trainers love the animals to a T, and they said working with the killer whales was the greatest experience of their lives. And these things weighed upwards, starting at 4 tons and up, going up to 6 to 8 tons. Massive creatures. They trained the killer whales to do tricks. But in the entire movie, there is no explanation given to these trainers on what you're actually working with. It's like, I'm treating a dog. I'm training a dog to do various tricks. I'm training a cat to do tricks. I'm training a lion to do tricks. But there's no understanding of the mentality behind animals that are fairly intelligent and are quite capable and, of course, are wild. None of that was coming out in the documentary. So there's no explanation also of what you're working with. Hey, we're going to train you to work with these animals, but there was no experts, no veterans working with these trainers to understand what the complex relationship they were truly getting into. And that's a word that they use a lot, and I've seen this before. Relationship. We're a team, and they believed it. And the question is, they would say, well, she was a great trainer, he was a great trainer. Yeah, for tricks. But who was training the trainers? And that never came out, that never was expressed. It's very interesting when the kind of work that I do, and you work with kids, you work with adults, and you listen to a lot of trainings, you go to a lot of meetings, but rarely do you have the ability to go to people with experience in mental health and really pick their brains and say, what am I looking at? What am I really seeing here? And so often you're dealing with interns, people that are not experienced, and they give out diagnoses, they give out qualifications that are dreadful. And they get kids labeled, or even adults labeled with disorders that they don't have, medications that they don't need, and it affects them far beyond sitting in a room talking to somebody. When you say to somebody, this is your diagnosis, this is your medication, implication for work, for your social life, for religious issues, multiple issues that kind of spray out. And it's the same thing with doing tricks with the whales. It's like, okay, we could teach the whale to roll over and flip its flipper and splash people, but no one thought about what really are we doing with these creatures? What are we really accomplishing? What is the ultimate goal? What is their future? No one thought about it. That's why when you go to a clinician, and I'm saying this just using this as an example, don't just go to somebody that's going to just give you what is your experience? More than that, what is your knowledge? What do you believe in? What is your goal with me? What is your plans with me? Am I going to sit here for 5-6 years to talk to you? What is the end goal? So what's very, very interesting is that also in the movie, you see the issues of, they went to a researcher, they talked to him, and when these animals were first captured, they actually had footage of the animals being captured up in Washington State. And you watch as what happens is that the animals are so intelligent, these creatures, they do this. The mothers, they're swimming like this. The mothers with the calves, the children, split off. And the males went this way to avoid being they knew something was up. They were being hunted by boats, being hunted by helicopters. Had it been the boats, they would have escaped. But because they had helicopters and planes, they could see from the air where they were going into a cove. And they said, forget about these guys, go after them and capture them. Highly intelligent. Mothers protecting their babies. That's a bond. And yet, ignored that, we could get them, and they got them. Here's what's interesting. Once these animals were captured, this goes back to maternal instinct. Here's what happened. They set up the nets. They wanted the young ones because they could pick them up. Capture, 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 capture. The pod of 15 females or so, because they're maternal, they don't leave the pod, were doing this. They spent hours crying, using sounds because their children were being snatched. So imagine if you're a child, and this is your mom, okay, and she's screaming for you and you're screaming in terror, you've created a traumatic event, PTSD. You've created depression. And so many times when I work with children, and I go back to the parental, because when the parent can't be effective or can't be around, the child suffers. And they carry with them these scars that do not go away. So it's very, very interesting because the person who was involved in the capture said that it was so scary and so eerie to hear this that it never left him these kind of thoughts, Now I want to go to a couple of things here on this. I want to go again, we're not here to rip the trainers, that's not the point. They were invested in the best they could, they did what they thought was right. However, SeaWorld had a very, very vested interest in finding people they felt would put on the right face to the public. No advanced training, no biology, no anatomy, no experience working in zoos, working with sea creatures, none of that. Just looked pretty. Everyone was very attractive, great smiles and great teeth. And a lot of times in life, what you see is what you don't get. So people can give you, a lot of smiles and a lot of grins, but what are you actually getting when you're actually dealing with people? Hi, the queen look, the queen wave, right? Like this. Where is the substance? And if you don't have substance in a relationship, in a job, with your spouse, with your kids, you have nothing. And these trainers were great. Listen, hey, who hasn't been to SeaWorld? I went to SeaWorld with my kids. I was in Splash Zone. I got splashed. I thought the whole thing was great, but you realize the trainers, as much as they thought they had a relationship, there was no relationship. It was just basically just doing these tricks. So who was doing the training? What are you really getting? Get them to focus just on the role with the whales. And that's interesting also because look at this. I want to clarify this as well. You could train a 5-ton animal, 10,000 pounds, to do this. To come out of the water, leap in the air, catch you, swim, beg for food, circle, do all kinds of gyrations, and they can handle that like a performer, like an adult, like a real human being. Here's my point. If they can do this, how much more are they capable? What's always so shocking to me is that when you work with children, is that so often we disregard them. Oh, he can't do this, he can't do this. Never get into that part where you believe the label placed on you And if you can do more, you can do more. With just, again, watching a documentary, these animals are doing all these crazy things well, on command, with a simple whistle. So you think if they can do this, what more can they do? No one seemed to make that kind of connection. And so often, if you're in this dysfunctional relationship, you don't realize, like, what is dysfunction? Like, oh, I'm really getting myself into a bad situation here. You're not seeing the parallels. And that's the parallel with what these animals are going through. Mindless tricks again and again and again to make the audience happy, but who is making them happy? And in a relationship, when you're working with children, are you vested? Is it going like this? Is there a connection where you're giving both to each other and making both sides feel they got something out of it? These animals were not, and they were becoming fully enraged and angry. Now, here's the thing also. What was going on with these animals? Stress, depression, and PTSD. And the same attributes applies to people as well. To a T, these trainers believe they were part of a team. It's a relationship between, what can I say? That word relationship between the trainer and the whale. But who was training these people? Who were the veterans that really knew these complex creatures? Hey, this animal looks stressed. This animal looks upset. This animal looks angry. I don't like the way they performed that trick. They got a little bit too close to the trainer. Oh, they brushed against another animal, or they were hurting another animal, which is very common in SeaWorld land of all the different parks. The whales would attack each other out of frustration because they were in such small pens at night and during the day. A lot of pent-up aggression. And when you see that in relationships, like I pushed her, I yelled at her, I screamed at her, where is the aggression coming from? It doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't just happen randomly. Where is the aggression coming from? Stress at work, stress with your partner, your kids are making you cuckoo, your boss is angry at you, you don't have enough money to pay your bills. So how are you going to decrease that aggression that's growing, so you don't get to the point you do this and you do this. In any environment, you have to have people looking out for you that have the experience and knowledge and know-how. And in the movie, is there any of this taking place? I get calls all the time, and I contact people myself to say, hey, I'm dealing with a case I'm not sure about. People call me, I call them. I listen for feedback. I elicit feedback. Hey, I got the experience, but I don't know everything. Sometimes I'm dangerous at what I know, but that's it. I'm not like a genius on every topic in mental health. So I reach out to other people and call. Hey, I got a question. In this movie, this never, ever took place. It was a recipe for disaster. You were left to your own devices, and that's when tragedy will strike as it did. When you're left on your own, okay, when there's no one looking out for you, okay, when you don't have this is so important. It's called a mentor. Someone to look out for you to make sure you're okay. You're in trouble. Because when you're left to your own devices, guaranteed you will screw up. And all these 20 and 30-something trainers in the movie never shown having anyone they can go to, some vet that can say, these animals, whoa, let's not do the show today. Let's cancel the show. I understand there was always financial considerations. But in life, too, you have to have someone to go to. Let me clarify this also. See this? This is my pathetic drawing. This is an island. No man's an island. You always have to learn how to reach out to other people when you need help to go seek it. That's how you grow. That's how you become mature. And that's how you become successful. Okay, now, also want to say this. Even their capture showed complex thinking and self-awareness. Like we talked about this before. The pod, the family, the group, the organization stayed behind long after they were captured. That's what's called a bond between a mother and child. Once broken, trust me, it makes no difference if it's a whale. See, we're changing on the fly very quick. If it's a whale, it's a child. Okay? You take away that bond, you destroy that bond, you're never the same again. And you will grow up antisocial, angry, depressed, and looking to lash out at others around you as the anger has to go somewhere. This is what anger looks like. Okay, this is a volcano. You know, right here, the lava. Okay, that's anger. And if you don't get that anger diffused in a healthy way, in an appropriate way, that anger is eventually going to do this. It's going to erupt. And whatever in its path is going to get destroyed. And when you start to seethe and get angry and feel that no one's looking out for you, that's when, watch out, because that's when trouble starts. Part of my job as a clinical social worker is I'm constantly advising parents, people around me to say, hey, be careful, be careful. This is a problem. I could see the anger starting to come out. This animal was captured in the North Atlantic, this animal called Tilikum. In 1983, went to work at a place called Sealand. He would be hit and denied food. Again, you're creating the anger. Animal wants to eat, growing animal, child still, no food. Working with another whale, big mistake. 2 whales, 2 females that were smaller than him, more agile. So that whale would mess up and the trainer would hit it and deny it food. And how would it take out of her aggression? Would attack the killer whale, attack Tilikum. By the way, let me say this very quickly about killer whales. That expression is from man. Whales do not attack people in the ocean. They're too busy looking for seals and other things that are a lot more tasty than us. But the only reason why the term killer whale came out was because it captured the public's imagination. They're not violent creatures. They look after other things to eat, not us. And when you have animals, okay, here I want to clarify this as well. You have a situation like this. How do people learn how to get along with each other? You learn to coexist. But when you're in complex pods, okay, animal, 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 that don't know each other, dominance will come out. And there's no chance to get away, to blow off steam. And they were in these tiny little pens at night, right next to each other. Boom. They were attacking this Tilikum all night long and all day long, beating him up. What did they think was going to happen to this animal? What do we do with kids? Foster care? Oh, that's real successful. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to create an angry, unhappy person. Let's move from foster home to foster home to foster home, group home, group home, group home, with new kids to deal with all the time. Where's the anger not going to come from? Where's the depression, the rage, the anger? I know where the bullying is going to come from. I know where the sexual offending is going to come from. But when you're in that situation, you feel helpless, hopeless, and powerless, like this animal did and like kids do when their life is just going to be a complete mess. So I want to clarify one last point. They would actually show pictures of this animal, Tilikum, as a young kid, ripped apart, bloody, scar marks, bite marks, with the other animals, the other whales, were biting him. And no one seemed to be able to put it together. And this was the seeds for his aggression, because you have to start somewhere. Had females gang up on him at night, tiny pod, little pool. Oh, here's another thing too. No light, no stimulation. When you're a young child, you have to be exposed. It's called failure to thrive. If you're not exposed to things around you, stimulus, 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 you don't grow. And the kids that I work with, when I've assessed, when I look at them and I say, what has your lifestyle been? And the lifestyle has been one of no stimulation, no activity, no growth, then how could you be functional? It doesn't make any sense. So I wanted to clarify this. And this was what's led to his psychosis and to his aggression. Okay, we're going to stop right here. I want to get some points across. We're going to bring it back next week whatever. We're going to bring it back real soon for part 2. There's so much here to talk about. It's a fascinating topic, but my ultimate goal is to clarify how a whale and a child can actually have the same diagnosis going down. I'm going to break that all down for everybody. Thank you for watching.